The fluorescent lights above hummed like an electric storm as the clock on the wall blinked 2:14 a.m. The sterile air of Grace General Hospital was thick with antiseptic and panic. Amelia Grant's voice broke through the silence, raw and wild, the kind of sound that carried both life and fury. Her hands gripped the rails of the delivery bed so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Sweat streamed down her forehead as another contraction ripped through her, stealing her breath and composure. Nurses moved quickly, their voices calm but urgent, as the fetal monitor beeped in an uneven rhythm that made Amelia's heart race harder than her labor pains. And then the door burst open. Liam Ashcroft stood in the doorway, breathless, his tailored suit disheveled, tie askew, eyes wide with shock. For a moment he couldn't move. He could only stare at the woman he'd lost, her dark hair plastered to her forehead, her lips trembling as she cried out in pain. His voice caught in his throat as the truth hit him with the force of a collapsing world. She wasn't just in labor. She was giving birth to his children. The air in the room changed, charged with disbelief, fear, and something even more unbearable, recognition. "Get him out!" Amelia's scream cut through the room, hoarse and trembling. "Get him out! He has no right to be here." Dr. Elena Monroe looked up from the foot of the bed, her gloved hands steady. "He's listed on the birth certificate, Amelia," she said, her tone calm but firm. "Legally, he can stay." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. Not the tears of a woman in pain, but of a woman cornered by fate. She shook her head furiously, her breaths coming out in jagged gasps. "I don't care about the paperwork. I don't care about the law. I don't want him here." But her voice faltered as another contraction tore through her. Her scream melted into a sob. Liam stepped forward instinctively, his voice breaking. "Amelia, please. Just let me—" "Don't you dare!" she hissed, her eyes locking on him with fire that made him freeze in place. The nurse placed a damp cloth on her forehead, but nothing could cool the heat of her rage or the trembling in her chest. He shouldn't have come. He knew that. But when his phone rang that night, when the hospital called to say Miss Grant has gone into emergency labor and you're listed as next of kin, he didn't think. He ran. Now, seeing her here, every memory came back like shattered glass. The night she left, the unanswered calls, the silence that had haunted him ever since. The monitor beeped faster. The nurses exchanged tense glances. "The baby's heart rate is dipping," Dr. Monroe said sharply. "We need to focus." Liam moved closer despite Amelia's glare. Her hand slipped from the rail during a contraction, and without thinking, he caught it. Her fingers gripped his instinctively, desperate for something solid. For one fleeting second, time stopped. The anger, the betrayal, the years, they dissolved in the chaos of the moment. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his. The pain in them wasn't just physical. It was everything he'd done to her. Every lie, every absence. "You don't get to touch me," she whispered through clenched teeth, her voice trembling. He nodded, swallowing hard, and gently released her hand, his chest aching as he stepped back. "Okay, Amelia," Dr. Monroe said. "One more push." "You're almost there!" Amelia screamed again, her body trembling as the nurses coached her through it. Liam's vision blurred as tears welled in his eyes. He couldn't look away, not from her strength, not from the miracle he didn't deserve to witness. And then, a cry split the air. High, fragile, beautiful. The sound of new life. Amelia collapsed back against the pillows, sobbing from exhaustion and heartbreak. The nurse lifted a tiny infant, red-faced and crying, placing the baby gently on her chest. "It's a girl," Dr. Monroe said softly. Amelia stared at the child through her tears, her lips trembling. For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of them, mother and daughter, safe and whole. Then she looked up, eyes filled with fresh fury. Liam was crying too, silently, his hands trembling at his sides. "You don't get to cry," she said bitterly. "You don't get this moment. You lost it when you left." Liam didn't argue. He just stood there, his heart breaking open quietly, watching the woman he loved hold their child, and in the hum of monitors and whispered congratulations, the truth settled like a shadow between them. She was right. He had lost everything the night he walked away. But fate, cruel, merciful fate, had brought him back to witness what he was never meant to see. Outside, the first light of dawn crept across the city skyline, painting the hospital windows gold. Inside, Amelia Grant held her newborn close, whispering a promise Liam would never hear. "You'll never need him the way I did." The rain poured over Seattle like a confession the sky could no longer keep. Liam stood outside the hospital, soaked to the bone, the sound of Amelia's scream still echoing in his chest. He had been many things in his life: ruthless in business, cold in negotiations, unshakable in front of entire boards of directors, but nothing had prepared him for the way her voice could break him with 3 words, "Get him out." He leaned against the cold glass wall and tried to breathe, but every inhale brought the same truth: he had no idea why she hated him this much. No idea why the woman who once whispered, "I trust you now," looked at him as if he was poison. A flash of memory cut through the storm like lightning the last time he had seen her. 1 year ago, a night of champagne and promises on the balcony of his penthouse overlooking the city lights. She had been wearing that pale blue dress, the one that looked like dusk itself, and he had told her that she was the only thing in his life that felt real. That was before the call that changed everything, before his mother's voice told him to meet her urgently, before the betrayal that tore everything apart. Inside the hospital, Amelia couldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him standing there in that doorway, his gray eyes wide and his lips parted like he'd been punched by the sight of her. The pain of childbirth was nothing compared to the pain of remembering. Her body was shaking, but not from exhaustion, from fury. How dare he show up now after everything he'd done, after the way he'd bought her silence and disappeared? She wanted to throw something, scream again, but then she heard a tiny whimper beside her, and everything else fell away. Her daughter. Her whole world now. Dr. Monroe entered quietly with a clipboard, her tone soft but firm. "The other baby is coming soon, Amelia. You need to save your strength." Amelia nodded, fighting back tears. She hadn't told anyone except her brother Ethan that she was carrying twins. Not even Liam, especially not Liam. If he had known, he would have used them as leverage, just like he used everything else. She would not let that happen again. 2 floors below, Liam was pacing like a trapped animal. His assistant had texted him twice: board crisis, urgent investors waiting. He ignored it. For once in his life, the empire could burn. His mind replayed every conversation from that last week with Amelia, every word she had said before vanishing. "You're choosing your image over me. You're choosing control over love." And then she was gone. No goodbye, no closure, only silence that lasted an entire year. Lightning struck somewhere outside the hospital window, and Liam remembered the envelope he had found months ago in his mother's safe, Amelia's handwriting. On the corner, ripped open but never read. He hadn't dared to ask Grace about it then. But tonight, the puzzle pieces started shifting in his head. What if Amelia never got his messages? What if she never knew he was trying to find her? The thought chilled him more than the rain. Upstairs, another cry pierced the night. The second baby had arrived. Liam froze mid-step, his heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the storm. 2 cries now, not 1. Twins. The truth hit like thunder. She hadn't just hidden herself. She had hidden them. His children. His blood. When he reached the doorway again, Dr. Monroe was holding a small boy in a blue blanket. She looked up and her eyes softened despite the tension. "He's healthy. You have a son." Liam's knees almost buckled. He had missed everything. Every heartbeat, every moment, every chance to prove he could have been different. Inside the room, Amelia turned her face away from him, pretending to sleep, but her hand trembled on the edge of the blanket. She could feel him watching her, could feel the storm between them pressing heavier than the one outside. She hated that her body still remembered his voice, the warmth of it, the way he used to say her name like a promise. Dr. Monroe placed the boy beside his sister and dimmed the lights, leaving only the steady beeping of monitors and the rhythm of rain on glass. Liam took 1 step forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know, Amelia. I swear to you I didn't know." Her eyes opened slow, her gaze like ice. "Now you do, and that's all you'll ever get." As he turned to leave, the wind howled through the hospital corridors, carrying the echo of her words like a verdict. But deep down, Amelia felt something she didn't want to admit. His voice had cracked with truth, and somewhere buried under all her anger, a single fragile thought whispered, "What if he's telling the truth?" The next morning, the hospital corridors smelled of rain and coffee and quiet heartbreak. Amelia lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the world outside began to move again. But her world had stopped the moment she heard his voice in that delivery room. The twins slept in the clear bassinets beside her, both tiny, perfect miracles born into chaos. She reached out and brushed her fingers over their soft hair, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. No one was ever going to hurt them the way she had been hurt, especially not him. Down the hall, Liam stood at the nursery window, his reflection overlapping with the sleeping infants inside. The boy had his eyes, the girl had her mother's mouth, and he could barely breathe looking at them. They were real, his children, flesh and blood and innocence he hadn't earned. His phone buzzed again, another call from his assistant. He turned it face down on the counter. The company could collapse for all he cared right now. He wasn't leaving this hospital until he understood how everything had gone so wrong. Dr. Monroe approached quietly, a clipboard in hand, her tone professional, but her eyes sharp. "You need to give her space, Liam. She's been through enough." He turned to her, desperate. "I'm not here to make trouble. I just want to know why she left, why she never told me." The doctor hesitated, then sighed. "Sometimes people disappear because it's the only way to survive. If you really want answers, you'll have to earn them." Later that day, a journalist appeared in the hospital lobby, flashing credentials from a finance magazine. Word had already leaked that Liam Ashcroft, the elusive biotech billionaire, had spent the night at Grace General. Cameras were waiting outside. Amelia saw the flash of light from her window, and her stomach twisted. This was exactly what she feared. Her children's birth wasn't a private miracle anymore. It was a headline. She pushed herself out of bed, ignoring the pain, and grabbed a robe. When she stepped into the hall, she saw Liam cornered by a reporter demanding to know if he planned to claim the babies. The question hit her like a slap. Claim them, as if they were trophies or proof of legacy. Amelia marched forward, her voice low but trembling with fury. "They're not part of your empire, Liam. They're not your next press release." The crowd went silent. The reporter backed off, sensing the storm about to break. Liam's jaw tightened. "That's not why I'm here, Amelia." "Then why are you here?" she shot back. "To play savior. To fix your reputation. You had a chance to be there before they existed. Before the pain. Before the sleepless nights." He stepped closer, his voice raw. "I didn't know. You think I would have walked away from you from them if I had known?" She froze, hearing the crack in his voice, the ache that didn't sound rehearsed. Dr. Monroe appeared again, urging calm, but the damage was done. Every nurse, every patient in the hallway could feel the electric tension between them. Amelia turned away, her eyes burning. "Leave, Liam. Please just leave before I forget how much I hate you." He didn't move. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and held out a folded piece of paper. She recognized her own handwriting instantly. The letter she had written a year ago and burned in her kitchen sink. Except it wasn't burned. It was creased and smudged but whole. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. His voice shook. "My mother's safe. It was opened last week. She had this the whole time. Every word you wrote. She told me you wanted nothing from me. That you'd taken the money and disappeared." Amelia's knees nearly gave out. She clutched the wall as the ground shifted under her. The betrayal was deeper than she'd ever imagined. Her anger at Liam, her resentment at his absence, all of it had been built on lies someone else orchestrated. Grace Ashcroft. The same woman who once smiled at her and said, "You'll never be enough for my son." The air in the corridor thickened. Liam's expression hardened into something cold and resolute. "She took everything from us, Amelia. I'm going to find out why." For the first time since she'd seen him again, she believed him. But that terrified her even more because the man standing before her now wasn't the one who broke her heart. This one looked like he was ready to destroy anyone who tried to hurt her again. That night, as the twins slept peacefully, Amelia sat in the dark rocking chair beside their crib, replaying the day's events. The truth was a storm just beginning to gather, and somewhere beyond the hospital, walls. Grace Ashcroft poured herself a glass of wine, smiled at the city lights, and whispered to her reflection he was never supposed to find her. The morning light crept through the hospital, blinds like a reluctant secret. Amelia hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that letter in Liam's hands, her handwriting exposed like an open wound. She'd written it the night she left a trembling apology mixed with heartbreak and hope, then burned it in her kitchen sink, convinced it was gone forever. But his mother had kept it locked away. Hidden truth had destroyed everything between them. And now that truth was out in the open, like a blade waiting to cut again. Liam had spent the night in his car outside the hospital, unable to leave. The memory of Amelia's face when she realized what Grace had done replayed over and over like punishment. He'd built his entire empire on control, yet one woman with a cruel smile had managed to tear apart the only thing that ever mattered to him. By the time dawn came, he wasn't thinking about business or legacy anymore. He was thinking about revenge. Inside her room, Amelia sat up as Dr. Monroe entered with the twins' discharge papers. "They're both healthy, Amelia, but they'll need follow-up care. Are you sure you want to go home today?" The hesitation in the doctor's voice wasn't medical. It was emotional. Amelia forced a smile. "I can't stay here any longer. Every hallway reminds me of him." As she packed a small bag, she heard voices outside the door. Liam's voice low, firm, dangerous. "Grace, you shouldn't be here." His mother's tone was smooth like poisoned honey. "I'm your family, Liam, not that woman. I did what I had to do to protect you from someone who wanted your money, not your heart." Amelia froze. Grace was here. The same woman who'd ruined her life stood just beyond the door as if summoned by guilt. Every muscle in her body went cold. She pressed her hand to the doorknob but didn't open it. Liam's voice rose, now stripped of restraint. "You forged my signature. You intercepted her letter. You made her believe I paid her to disappear. How could you?" Grace's reply was calm, almost pitying. "Because love makes men weak. You were destined for power, not domestic tragedy." Something inside Liam snapped. "You destroyed my family," he shouted. "Do you even understand what you've done?" The hallway went silent. Amelia's pulse thundered in her ears. When she finally opened the door, both of them turned. Grace stood in her designer coat, flawless as ever, her expression unreadable. Liam's face was pale, his jaw clenched so tightly that a vein pulsed at his temple. Amelia's voice shook, but her words were sharp. "You looked me in the eyes and told me I wasn't good enough. You watched me walk away pregnant and alone." Grace didn't flinch. "You should thank me, my dear." "You would have ruined him." Amelia stepped closer, every word trembling with fury. "I didn't ruin him. You did." The confrontation exploded into chaos. Nurses rushed to the scene trying to calm the shouting. Security was called, but Grace only smiled a cold, distant smile and whispered to her son, "You think she'll forgive you for this? Wait until she learns what else I've kept from you." Then she turned and walked away, heels echoing down the corridor like gunfire. Amelia turned to Liam. What did she mean, what else? His expression was haunted. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." That night, Liam met with a private investigator in his office downtown. Rain battered the windows as files spread across the glass table, showing years of transactions and hidden documents tied to the Ashcroft family trust. At first glance, it looked like routine estate business, but then something caught his eye. A hospital record from 8 years earlier, signed by Grace Ashcroft, approving an emergency payment to cover up a surgical incident at an Ashcroft-owned clinic. The patient's name jumped off the page, Amelia's mother. The truth slammed into him like a physical blow. Grace hadn't just broken them apart. She had blood on her hands. Meanwhile, Amelia sat at home in the dim light of her apartment, watching the twins sleep. She felt uneasy, as if something invisible was closing in around her. When her phone rang, she almost didn't answer. It was Liam, his voice unsteady but urgent. "Amelia, I found something about your mother. You need to see it." The room tilted. Her breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "Just meet me tomorrow," he said. "At my office. Bring someone you trust." When he hung up, the silence left behind was heavier than fear itself. She looked at the twins, then at the rain streaking the window. Whatever secret Grace was hiding hadn't just broken love. It might have destroyed lives. And tomorrow, Amelia would face the truth that linked her past to Liam's family in a way neither of them could ever escape. The next morning, the city was gray and restless, a storm pressing against the glass walls of Liam's office. Papers covered his desk files pulled from archives, bank statements, old hospital records, every page screaming of something he didn't want to believe. He had spent the night hunting through the Ashcroft empire, and what he found turned his blood to ice. His mother hadn't just lied about Amelia, she had paid to hide a scandal involving Amelia's mother. A surgical error covered up with money and silence. He couldn't understand how deep it went, or how long his family's fortune had been built on the pain of others. When Amelia arrived, she was pale but steady Ethan walking beside her like a shield. The elevator doors opened to reveal Liam waiting near the floor-to-ceiling windows, his expression carved from stone. He looked different to her, older somehow, as if one night had aged him years. She stopped a few feet away, the tension between them heavy enough to choke the air. "You said it was about my mother," she said quietly. "Tell me what you found." Liam motioned to the file on the table. She approached slowly, her eyes scanning the hospital report, the signatures, the numbers, until she found the name that made her legs go weak. Margaret Grant, patient, fatal surgical complication compensation issued under Ashcroft Medical Holdings. The world tilted around her. "My mother died in that hospital. You're telling me your family paid to cover it up?" Liam's voice was hoarse. "My mother paid the hospital to bury the report. I didn't know until last night." Ethan stepped forward, fury flashing in his eyes. "You expect us to believe you didn't know? You expect us to forgive this?" Liam didn't look away. "No, I expect you to hate me, but I'm not hiding anymore." Amelia turned toward the window, her reflection trembling against the storm clouds outside. "All these years I blamed fate. I thought my mother's death was an accident, but it was your mother's signature that bought her silence." Liam took a step closer, his voice breaking. "I can't undo what she did, but I can make it right. I'll open the case. I'll expose her even if it destroys everything." Amelia faced him, then tears in her eyes. "Don't make promises you can't keep, Liam. People like your mother don't fall. They just find softer ground to land on." That night, Grace received the first sign that her secrets were unraveling. A news alert appeared on her tablet, Ashcroft Biotech, under investigation, internal documents leaked. She poured herself a drink and smiled faintly. "He thinks he's punishing me," she whispered. "He has no idea how deep this goes." Meanwhile, Amelia sat in her apartment, surrounded by silence, the twins sleeping peacefully in their cribs. She thought of her mother, the gentle hum of her lullabies, and the long nights she'd worked at the same hospital that now stood stained with the Ashcroft name. Liam's voice echoed in her mind, "I'll expose her even if it destroys me." At that very moment, Liam stood alone in his office, staring at a single envelope addressed to him in his mother's handwriting. The seal was unbroken. Inside he knew were answers, but maybe not the kind he wanted. He tore it open and read the first line, his heart stopping as the words burned into his mind. "It was never supposed to be your burden. She was never supposed to die." Below the letter was an attached document, a second surgical report dated months after Margaret Grant's death, naming another patient, the same surgeon, the same payment, and a note written in Grace's hand, "Find her before she remembers." Liam froze because the second patient's name was someone he already knew, Dr. Elena Monroe. The storm outside cracked like a warning as lightning lit the room, and Liam realized his mother's crimes hadn't ended in the past. The woman who had helped Amelia deliver her children was the next on Grace's list. The danger wasn't over. It was only beginning. The night was restless and heavy, with rain, thunder rolling like distant anger over the city skyline. Liam hadn't left his office since he read the letter, his mother's words burned into his mind. It was never supposed to be your burden, she was never supposed to die. Those words haunted him more than any scandal or threat. He stared at the second page, the one that mentioned Dr. Elena Monroe, and his pulse quickened. If Grace had tried to silence Amelia's mother and then targeted Elena, that meant the danger wasn't history, it was repeating. He grabbed his coat and left the building, the streets shimmering with reflections of red traffic lights. The hospital tower rose ahead, a beacon of everything broken between him and Amelia. Inside, the corridor smelled of antiseptic and exhaustion. He found Elena in the staff lounge, drinking cold coffee, reviewing patient charts. When she saw him, her expression hardened. "You shouldn't be here, Liam. My shift's over, but that doesn't mean I'm free for interrogation." He laid the document on the table in front of her. She froze when she saw her own name typed under the Ashcroft medical letterhead. The color drained from her face. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "My mother's office," he said. "Why would she pay to cover up a surgery with your name on it?" Elena closed the folder slowly, her fingers trembling. "Because I was the attending surgeon on Margaret Grant's case. Amelia's mother. Grace Ashcroft paid me to change the record." Liam's stomach turned. "You lied on the report." Elena's eyes filled with guilt. "I didn't know the truth until it was too late. The surgery was routine, but the equipment failed, a defective implant from one of Ashcroft's subsidiaries." Your mother told me she'd handle the paperwork if I stayed silent. She said she'd protect my career, and I believed her, until the night Amelia's mother died. The sound of a door creaking made them both turn. A nurse stepped into the hallway carrying a stack of files, but her eyes lingered on them longer than necessary. Liam's instincts prickled. He waited until the nurse left before lowering his voice. Someone's watching us. Elena nodded. You think Grace doesn't have eyes everywhere? She's been trying to buy my silence again. Last week I got a wire transfer for $200,000 with no sender name. I didn't touch it. Liam ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. This isn't just about a cover-up. This is criminal. If she's willing to threaten doctors, what else will she do to keep her name clean? Elena's voice trembled. She doesn't just threaten people, Liam. She ruins them. And Amelia is next. At that same moment, Amelia sat in her apartment rocking the twins as the rain whispered against the windows. A car idled across the street, headlights dimmed, engine running too long to be coincidence. She pulled the curtains closed, but unease crawled up her spine. When her phone buzzed, she nearly dropped it. The caller ID was unknown. A distorted voice filled her ear. Stop digging, Miss Grant. Some graves aren't meant to be opened. The line went dead. Her hands shook as she dialed Liam. He answered on the first ring. Amelia, what's wrong? There's someone outside my apartment, she said, barely breathing, and someone just called me. They know about the investigation. Liam's voice sharpened. Don't move. I'm on my way. 15 minutes later, headlights cut through the rain as he pulled up outside her building. The car across the street sped off, vanishing into the night. Amelia met him at the door, her face pale, her hands clutching one of the twins. He stepped inside, dripping rainwater, his heart pounding. You're safe now, he said, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. She looked at him, eyes wide with panic. Safe isn't real anymore, Liam. Not when your mother still controls everything. He pulled out the letter and showed her the name written in Grace's elegant handwriting. Amelia read it once and her knees almost buckled. Dr. Elena Monroe, she whispered. She's the one who delivered my babies. Liam nodded grimly. Grace's reach isn't just about the past. She's cleaning up what's left. Amelia backed away, shaking her head. No, this can't be happening. Then the power went out. The apartment plunged into darkness. Outside, thunder rolled closer, a violent sound that rattled the glass. Liam grabbed her arm, whispering, stay quiet. The twins stirred in their crib as footsteps echoed in the hallway outside her door. Slow, deliberate, unhurried. Someone was there. The doorknob turned once, then stopped. Silence. Liam's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Whoever it was wanted them to know they weren't safe. Then came a knock. 3 soft taps like a warning before disappearing into the night. Amelia clutched his arm, whispering, What do they want from us? Liam looked toward the door, his voice low and certain. The truth. And my mother will burn the whole world to keep it buried. The night after the power outage hung heavy over the city like smoke from an invisible fire. The police had come and gone, marking the break-in as a failed burglary, but Amelia knew better. The man outside her door hadn't wanted to steal anything, he had wanted to send a message. Liam hadn't slept. He stayed by the window with a hand wrapped around his phone, and the other resting on the edge of the crib where the twins slept. Every sound from the street made his pulse race. He had seen fear before in boardrooms and wars for power, but this was different. This fear had a name, and it was his mother. At sunrise, he called his investigator Marcus, who had once worked intelligence for the government. By 9, Marcus was standing in Liam's office, spreading photographs across the desk. Security camera stills from the hospital parking lot, a man in a dark coat, a black car registered under an offshore corporation that traced back to a hidden Ashcroft subsidiary. Marcus pointed to the logo barely visible on a crate in one frame. That's her logistics company, the same one that paid hush money to Monroe years ago. Liam's jaw tightened. She's still moving money. She's buying silence. Marcus nodded and said one more thing. She's also buying people. Across the city, Grace Ashcroft sat at a long dining table staring out over her garden, as her lawyer placed a folder in front of her. We have a problem, Mrs. Ashcroft. Your son is reopening the Grant case. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that belonged to someone who never lost. Then I suppose it's time to remind him who taught him how to win. Back in Amelia's apartment, the morning light felt colder than the night. She made coffee, but her hands were shaking. Ethan arrived with his jaw set tight. You're moving out today, he said. I found a safe house in Bainbridge. Amelia looked at the twins. their tiny hands reaching for her necklace. "What happens when he finds out she's still coming after us?" Ethan asked. "Are you going to keep pretending this can be fixed with forgiveness?" Before she could answer, a soft knock came at the door again. Liam stepped inside, holding a briefcase, his eyes shadowed by exhaustion. "We can't stay reactive," he said. "We have to take control. Grace will bury everyone who stands in her way, and she's already started cleaning up." He opened the case and slid out photographs of documents, contracts, and offshore transfers. Amelia's breath caught. "How did you get these?" He hesitated. "From her office." Amelia froze. "You broke into her office." He nodded. "I don't care if it costs me everything." Ethan's voice was sharp. "You're walking into a trap. You don't beat people like Grace by playing their game." Liam turned to him with quiet fury. "No, I beat her by showing the world who she really is." That night, the three of them met in the hospital basement where Elena Monroe had agreed to speak privately. The air smelled of bleach and metal. Elena looked pale, her eyes darting to the door every few seconds. She placed a flash drive on the table. "Everything she ever covered up for Grace is on here. Surgical reports, payments, falsified research. If this goes public, Grace Ashcroft loses everything," Amelia whispered. "Then let's take it to the press." Elena shook her head. "There's one more name you need to see first." She opened a file on the screen, and the name filled the room like a gunshot. "Ethan Monroe." Amelia stared at her brother. He went still as stone. Elena whispered he was a junior accountant at the time. Grace used his credentials to launder money through the hospital accounts. Ethan whispered, "I never knew. She framed me." Before anyone could speak, the elevator above them clanked, and the emergency lights flickered. Elena's voice broke. "She's here." They grabbed the flash drive, but the basement door slammed shut, locking from the outside. Footsteps echoed on the stairwell, calm, measured, deliberate. Liam pulled Amelia behind a storage rack, whispering, "Stay low." The lights went out again, leaving only the heartbeat of silence and the distant hum of generators. Grace's voice floated through the dark, smooth, and venomous. "You should have left the past buried, my son. Some secrets keep you safe." The sound of her heels moved closer. Liam clenched his jaw, whispering, "Not this time, Mother." The flashlight beam swept across the room and landed on the twins' blanket that Amelia had accidentally dropped near the door. Grace froze when she saw it. "So she brought the children too," she said softly. "How poetic." Amelia's heart stopped. Liam stepped out from the shadows, his voice cold as steel. "You come near them, and I swear I'll make sure the whole world knows what you did." Grace smiled faintly. "Then I suppose we're both running out of time." She turned the flashlight off, plunging them into darkness again. A second later, the sprinklers erupted, spraying the room as the fire alarms blared. In the chaos, she was gone. When the sirens faded and the police arrived, the flash drive was missing. Elena collapsed against the wall, whispering, "It was in my pocket." She took it. Liam looked at Amelia, soaked from the sprinkler's eyes, burning with rage and guilt. "This isn't a battle anymore," he said. "It's war, and this time I won't lose." The fire alarm screamed through the hospital long after Grace Ashcroft disappeared into the storm. The sprinklers soaked every hallway, leaving a trail of confusion and flashing red lights. Liam stood drenched and shaking as firefighters pushed past him, unaware that the real blaze was the one burning through his chest. The flash drive was gone. The only proof that could destroy his mother's empire, stolen in seconds. Amelia clutched the twins close, whispering to keep them calm, but her own voice trembled with fear. She had seen the look in Grace's eyes before she vanished. Not fear, not guilt, but confidence. Grace had walked into that chaos knowing she would win again. By dawn, the hospital was a scene of questions without answers. Detectives interviewed everyone while rain washed the ash from the streets outside. Dr. Monroe sat at the edge of a stretcher wrapped in a blanket, her face pale. She looked at Liam and Amelia with hollow eyes. She took everything she said. Every record, every copy. "I kept one off-site, but it's encrypted. If she finds it before we do, she'll erase the truth forever." Liam's phone buzzed. It was Marcus, his investigator. He had traced Grace's car leaving the hospital, but it had vanished near the waterfront district. Then a second call came through from the office. Someone had broken into the Ashcroft biotech servers during the night, wiping entire archives. Grace wasn't running. She was cleaning house. That same morning, Grace stood in a private hangar as her jet idled ready for takeoff. Her assistant handed her a tablet showing the company stocks plummeting. She scrolled past the chaos with a faint smile. "Fear keeps them loyal," she said. The assistant hesitated. What about your son? Grace looked out at the rain-soaked runway. My son is learning that family is a battlefield. Back in the city, Liam gathered what was left of their allies, Marcus Ethan and Dr. Monroe, in the dim conference room of an old office he once owned. The power flickered, the storm still raging outside. The air smelled of coffee and fear. We have one chance, he said. The backup Monroe mentioned, where is it? She hesitated. In a safe deposit box under a false name, but it's tied to a biometric code only one other person has. Grace's former attorney, Ethan, leaned forward. The same man who signed the hospital settlements. He's not going to talk. Liam's voice hardened. Then we make him. That night they found the lawyer in a penthouse downtown. The man's hand shook as he opened the door, his face pale as if expecting this visit for years. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. Grace warned me. Liam stepped forward, rain dripping from his coat. Tell me where the key is, or I swear you'll wish you had never signed a single paper for her. The man hesitated, then opened a hidden drawer beneath his desk, revealing a silver keycard and a blood-stained envelope. She sent this last week. Said if anyone came asking, I should show them. Liam tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. It was Amelia standing outside her apartment the night of the blackout. A red target drawn around her face. Beneath it were 4 words written in Grace's elegant handwriting. She doesn't survive this. The world tilted. Amelia's breath caught as the air left her lungs. She stared at the picture, trembling. She knows where I live. She's watching us. Liam turned to the lawyer, his eyes dark. Where is she hiding? The man swallowed hard. She bought an estate on Whidbey Island last month under a trust name. No one goes there without an invitation. Within the hour, Liam had packed the twins and Amelia into his car. The ferry ride to the island was silent, only the sound of waves and thunder filling the air. Amelia sat in the passenger seat staring at the sleeping babies, whispering if she wanted us dead, we'd be dead already. Liam gripped the steering wheel, his jaw tight. She doesn't want you dead. She wants to break me. When they reached the island, the road wound through fog and forest, until the mansion appeared like a ghost rising from the earth. Every window glowed with golden light, too bright, too deliberate. The gates were open. She's expecting us, Amelia whispered. Liam parked at the edge of the drive, his pulse hammering. As they approached the door, it opened before they could knock. Grace stood there, calm in a white silk gown, her hair immaculate as if she hadn't destroyed lives just hours ago. Welcome home, she said softly. You finally brought her back to where she belongs. Amelia stepped forward, her voice shaking with fury. You ruined my mother's life. You destroyed mine. Grace smiled faintly. I built empires. My dear, sometimes people fall under the weight of greatness. Liam moved between them. You're done, Mother. It's over. She laughed, a quiet sound that chilled the air. Oh, Liam, it's only over when I say it is. Then from somewhere inside the house, a baby cried. Not theirs, another cry echoing through the hall. Amelia froze, her blood turning cold. That sound was identical to her son's. She turned toward the noise, eyes wide. Grace's smile deepened. You didn't think those were the only secrets I kept, did you? Liam stared at her, his heart pounding. What did you do? Grace's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Let's just say history has a way of repeating itself. The house fell silent except for that single distant cry. And for the first time, Liam realized his mother's empire hadn't just been built on lies. It had been built on stolen lives. Rain battered the island estate as lightning carved jagged scars across the sky. The mansion loomed ahead of Liam and Amelia like a living thing, its windows glowing against the storm. The echo of that baby's cry still drifted through the halls, even though neither of them could tell where it was coming from. Amelia clutched Liam's arm, trembling but defiant. Tell me what she meant. What did she do? Liam's throat tightened. I don't know, but we're finding out tonight. They stepped through the grand foyer, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and something metallic like blood. The lights flickered as if the house itself could feel their presence. Portraits of the Ashcroft family lined the walls, generations of cold faces staring down at them. At the end of the corridor, Grace stood waiting near the staircase holding a glass of wine, her calmness more terrifying than violence. I warned you, Liam, she said softly. Curiosity is a disease in our blood. Liam's voice cracked like thunder. Where is the baby? Grace tilted her head, her smile sharp. The one you hear is a memory. Sound can haunt a place when it's soaked in guilt. Amelia stepped forward, her eyes flashing. You lie as easily as you breathe. Grace's smile faded. Then come see the truth yourself. She led them down a narrow passage behind the stairs into a hidden chamber, lined with medical equipment, dusty files and flickering monitors. In the center stood an incubator, long powered down, its glass cracked but intact. Grace gestured to it with a trembling hand. That's where your mother's sins began, Liam. She wasn't trying to save Amelia's mother that night. She was trying to protect a secret the company created. Liam froze as the room filled with the hum of machines booting up automatically. On the monitors, old video logs began to play, showing hospital footage. His mother standing beside a hospital bed, the patient a woman who looked exactly like Amelia holding an infant. The voice from the speaker was Grace's from years ago. She's stable. The donor child survived. Proceed with the transfer. Amelia's heart stopped. That's my mother's face. She turned to Grace, tears streaming down. What did you do to her? Grace looked almost sad. She was part of a trial funded by Ashcroft Medical, experimental genetic treatments. The baby she carried wasn't supposed to live, but she did. She looked directly at Amelia. You did. Liam staggered back as the meaning sank in. You're saying she's part of the program. Grace nodded. Your mother used the same research to cure herself from the disease that nearly killed her when you were a child. That bloodline. Amelia's bloodline saved you, Liam. Amelia's world blurred. She could barely hear over the ringing in her ears. You're lying. Grace's smile returned faint and cruel. You think fate brought you two together? It was design. You're the proof that science can create destiny. Before Liam could respond, the lights went out again. A single red emergency bulb glowed in the corner, and a shadow moved through the doorway. Marcus appeared, his face pale. We have to go now. The police are on their way. Grace called them. She told them you broke in and kidnapped her. Liam grabbed Amelia's hand, pulling her toward the back exit. Grace's voice followed them through the darkness. You can't run from what you are, Liam. You can't run from me. They reached the car, the rain pounding hard enough to blur the windshield. Amelia stared out the window in silence, her mind spinning. Everything she thought she knew about her mother, her past, her love for Liam, had twisted into something monstrous. As they drove away, she whispered almost to herself, if what she said is true, then I was part of their experiment. Liam's hands tightened on the wheel. I don't care what she created. You're not her mistake. You're my miracle. Then the headlights behind them flared bright, blinding. A black SUV accelerated, closing in fast. Liam cursed and pressed the gas. The tires screamed against wet pavement. In the mirror, he saw the driver's face for a split second, cold, expressionless, one of Grace's private security men. Gunshots cracked through the storm. Glass shattered. Amelia screamed as a bullet tore through the back window. Liam swerved the car across the bridge leading off the island, but the road was slick and broken from the rain. One more shot hit the tire. The car spun the world, twisting into chaos before everything went black. When Amelia woke, the car was upside down, smoke curling through the rain. Liam was gone, the passenger door ripped open. She crawled out, gasping for air, calling his name, but the only answer was the storm. On the cracked asphalt, a phone lay glowing with a single message on the screen. It was from Grace. The text read 3 words. Bring me her. Rain poured like shattered glass over the broken bridge as Amelia crawled from the wreck, her body shaking with pain and fear. The twins were safe at home with Ethan, but Liam was gone, taken into the night by the same people who had tried to kill them. She could taste blood in her mouth as she screamed his name into the storm, her voice swallowed by thunder. The phone still glowed in the road beside her. Grace's message burned through the screen like a curse. Bring me her. She forced herself to her feet and staggered through the mud toward the tree line. Every branch felt like claws, pulling her back, every flash of lightning a reminder of how alone she was. Somewhere ahead, an engine started, then faded into the distance. They had him, and she wasn't going to let them keep him. By dawn, she reached the mainland, drenched, exhausted, but unbroken. Ethan met her at the ferry dock, his eyes widening when he saw the bruises on her face. What happened? Where's Liam? She pressed the phone into his hand. Grace has him. She wants me. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then she's going to get more than she bargained for. That night, they returned to the city where the Ashcroft Tower rose like a monument to everything corrupted. It was still half abandoned after the investigations, but Grace had returned there. Amelia knew it in her bones. The empire she'd built on lies would be the same place she tried to end this story. They moved through the lobby in silence, flashlights cutting through the dark. Somewhere above a faint piano melody echoed down the stairwell a lullaby Amelia's mother used to hum. Her blood ran cold. She followed the sound up to the top floor, where the glass walls overlooked the storm-drenched skyline. Grace stood by the grand piano wearing the same white silk gown, her back turned. She didn't look surprised. "You made good time, my dear. Where is he?" Amelia demanded, her voice shaking with fury. Grace turned slowly, her expression calm, almost gentle. "Safe," she said. "For now." The door behind her opened, and two men stepped forward, dragging Liam between them. His face bloodied, but his eyes alive. "Let him go," Amelia said, stepping closer. Grace smiled faintly. "You were supposed to be my redemption, Amelia. The proof that my son could have everything without destroying it. But instead, you turned him against me." Liam struggled free enough to look at her. "You turned me against yourself, Mother. You killed everything good that ever came near you." Grace's hand trembled, though her voice stayed cold. "And yet here you are standing in the empire I built, begging me to spare a woman who was never meant to exist." Amelia stepped forward, the rain hammering the windows so hard, the glass quivered. "You can burn your empire, Grace, but you won't touch my family again." Grace laughed quietly. "You think this ends with me losing?" She raised her hand, revealing a small detonator, the light blinking red. "This building is wired. If I fall, everything falls with me." Liam's voice broke through the tension. "You don't have to do this. You've already lost." Grace looked at him, eyes shining with something between love and madness. "I lose nothing. I simply end the game." She pressed the trigger, but nothing happened. The light blinked once more, and went dead. Behind her, Ethan stepped from the shadows, holding a second device. "I rewired your toy before you got here." Grace froze, the first hint of fear crossing her face. "You think you can stop me?" Amelia walked closer until they stood face to face. "No," she whispered. "I think you already stopped yourself." For a moment, Grace's mask cracked. The stormlight caught her tears as she whispered almost to herself. "I wanted to make him strong. I wanted him to survive." Liam shook his head. "You could have chosen love instead of power." She turned away from him, trembling. "Love is weakness." Then the sirens began to wail below, red and blue lights flashing across the windows. The police had arrived, called by Marcus, who had traced their location. Grace looked out at the city, her empire dissolving in real time. She straightened her shoulders and gave a small, sad smile. "You think you've won, but you'll learn every empire costs something." Then she stepped backward toward the open window, her white gown whipping in the wind. Liam lunged forward, shouting, but it was too late. She disappeared into the storm below, swallowed by the darkness she had created. Hours later, the rain stopped. The city felt different, quieter, as if exhaling after years of holding its breath. Amelia sat in the hospital again, her arm bandaged, watching the sunrise through the glass. Liam sat beside her, bruised and tired but alive. The twins slept in their carriers at their feet, tiny symbols of a world that had almost ended but didn't. She looked at him, eyes soft. "It's over, isn't it?" Liam nodded slowly. "The company's gone. Her accounts are frozen. Everything she built has been dismantled." He looked at the babies, then at Amelia. "But what's left is real." She reached for his hand, their fingers trembling as they touched. "Maybe this is what survival looks like," she said. "Not revenge. Not legacy. Just us." Outside, the first rays of morning cut through the clouds, painting the world gold. Liam turned toward her, voice raw, but full of something he hadn't felt in years. "I never stopped loving you." Amelia smiled through her tears, leaning her forehead against his. "I know," she whispered. "That's why we're still here." The camera of the world faded back through the glass wall of the hospital, showing the sun breaking over the city where the Ashcroft name once ruled. The empire had fallen, but in its place something better was born. Love that had survived fire, betrayal, and blood. And in that fragile morning silence, Liam and Amelia held each other, knowing they had finally won the only war that mattered.